In this episode, we get to talk to Lori Frederic, the Movement Ninja. That's right, she's back for the third time on the Safety Pro podcast. This time, we get to talk about a recent announcement she made about her health and how she's going through that, and she will be sharing her journey with the rest of us so that we might learn as well. That's very exciting. I think that she's taking on such a positive approach to this event in her life, and she's sharing some other information with us related to cold therapy and heat therapy. In the last episode with Lori, we kind of teased that we might get into this topic. So, with her impending medical procedure, she's going to be considering this as well, and she was generous enough to share her thoughts about that topic. So get ready for this conversation with Lori Frederic. Before we get into today's topic, I want to remind everybody, if your business is reopening after any kind of closure due to COVID, or you've continued to remain open, but you're struggling with how to mark your facilities to ensure physical distancing and relay important information about safety and health as it relates to COVID, I want you to go visit our friends over at MightyLine Floor Tape. MightyLine has some great products for you to mark your floors, whether it be the stand here, the 6 feet distancing, or just floor tape to denote lanes of travel. They have everything you need to mark your facility. So hit the link in the show notes, visit our friends at MightyLine Floor Tape. They are incredible partners in safety. I can't thank them enough for their support of the podcast. Again, MightyLine Tape for all of your floor marking needs.
Well, Lori, you are such a good friend to the podcast. I know that we've had you on several times, and everybody I know from, my side of the conversation has been, thinking about you lately and sending well wishes. Do you want to talk about the big news that you dropped on all of us on LinkedIn? Certainly is where most of us saw it, and kind of get into this topic?
Yeah, definitely. I know it was a big one. I was always trying to figure out at what point do I tell people that, the Movement Ninja needs a hip replacement. There's so many different thoughts that are always through my head. And I'm just like, you know what? This is becoming a journey that can help people. And I know that there's still so much information that I, talk about all the time, but now I get to put it to work on myself. So it can be super helpful. So I just kind of like, here we go. And it's so interesting to hear the replies, and through my email list and everything, I put it out in all ranges. And like next week, I'm going to the refinery that I work with in Kansas. And I put out, and someone emailed back. They're like, didn't you have a hip replaced? Like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, look, and other people are like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I think their vision in their head is that all of a sudden I'm hunched over and I'm on a walker right now, like can't get around. So that's been, I guess, the most entertaining for me is for people to all of a sudden think that I'm not productive or I can't go on with my usual life. To which then we have the conversation of, well, why are you getting it done? And I have to say, I wake up some mornings, I'm like, I feel pretty good. Why am I doing this? And then that other morning comes and I didn't sleep well and it's really pissed and it's aggravated. That's why I'm doing it. That I just got to a point where I'm probably 80% of myself. I haven't lifted heavy legs in a while, golfing pisses it off. Super big. Yeah. And that's one, like, it's my favorite date to do with my husband is golf. I'm like, if I can't golf right now, that's a huge quality of life issue for me. So that was really the deciding factor. I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm ready.
Is it just the motion, the twisting, the rotating type of, in that particular way?
Because in my case, it's a big arthritis problem. It's genetic. On my mom's side of the family, she's got 4 siblings. All but one have gotten hip replacements. The other one is on schedule too. My dad's gotten both replaced. So, I mean, the good news is I worked my dad through his. It's how I got into this niche of injury prevention. So I know how successful they are, and that you can make it a really great process. So that always keeps me in a good mindset because I've seen them so successful. But in my case, yeah, it's all gritty and whatever. And so the rotation, I think, is what kind of aggravates all the tears and things.
Yeah. Well, we always knew you were a hip lady. So there you go. You've not heard the hip puns yet, I'm sure, right?
Oh, shoot. I can't wait for them.
Your family. I'm surprised your family hasn't got a list of them going. So they're just waiting for the right time to to drop them.
Oh, totally. Right. It's one of those. I'm sure it'll go around. But essentially, I just want to really share the journey that you can have, that just because you need some procedure, and it could be a knee, a hip, a shoulder, a whatever, the rest of you isn't broken. And that's kind of my big process, and has been since I was a personal trainer with people. One of the most favorite things I had, I don't like it when people get hurt, but I'd have clients and like one tore his Achilles, but we got super creative on how do we work the rest of your body? How do we still work your legs? How do we, still do pull-ups and all those sorts of things? So the mentality of you have pain, it's not comfortable, but guess what? All the other things that you can still do is one of my big themes. And then for today, I really want to, I want to have this ice heat conversation.
Yeah. We alluded to it in our last conversation. So
yes,
it's fitting with what you're about to go through, right? Or are going through, but the procedure you're about to go through.
Yes, because it's definitely in orthopedic injuries for sure. And my son has had an ACL done. I had 2 ACLs in high school. So I'm familiar with the post-surgical ice it as much as you can. So now it's an interesting conversation to back up and be like, so do we really want to ice it all the time?
And that was a question. When do you use heat and when do you use ice? And I even question that. My wife and I will talk. I went for a run and my knee is sore. Do I ice it or do I use heat? What about before? What about after? And so yeah, enlighten us all, because I think it's important. There's a difference between an injury and just soreness, right? And how you would treat either. But school us on hot and cold, like when is it appropriate?
Right. Ooh. So I'm going to be the teacher here that is not the ultimate teacher, because, as we all do, you get in great networks of people to where you can learn from good things. There's someone, Dr. Perry Nicholson. He was part of the Rock Tape Instructor Group. He is at Stop Chasing Pain on most of his media. He is the master of the lymphatic system. Like, he has a super cool webinar, the Lymphatic Mojo, because the swelling in your body, your body's reaction to injury, is all in your lymphatic system. So that's kind of where this conversation started. And when you ice something, it constricts everything. It vasoconstricts and it just locks down for no circulation, which, may have, and it also numbs the area. Okay. So for pain relief, you can use ice. For numbing, when you can't handle the pain, and I'll say ice is relevant. I'd use ice over a pill of a narcotic, most definitely. So that's a better choice. But the body's way of healing in your lymphatic system, it's actually, why are we thinking that inflammation is really bad? It's that kind of mindset. It's actually delivering all the little cellular structures that need to be there, the white blood cells and everything, to heal the tissue. And then they need to come back out. So if you ice it and, you trap everything in there, you're not getting the circulation. So, a lot of times I get the question, okay, what about, 10 minutes of ice and then 10 minutes of heat, and alternate, so to speak. A lot of times that's just really extreme and you don't even need it. You could do more movement rather than the ice heat combo. And like for me, I just don't like being cold. Here it is, about to be winter. I'm not looking forward to it. So I'm not one that is going to go for ice because I just don't like being cold. So ice has a purpose, but for long-term tissue healing, it's not. And I just want to give a shout out to another person, Mike Stella. He's a ATC and athletic trainer out of New York, also part of my Rock Tape Connections, but he has a really cool end of the ice age 6-hour course that someone can take and dive into. That helps, like he'll go into the cellular level and all the lymphatic vessels and all this sort of stuff. Super amazing stuff. So it's really a perspective change, right? How if you've been through any EMT or first aid training, they're like, bag the ice, wrap it on. Here you go. And it's really just being questioned. And I think the start of it was the gentleman that coined the term RICE, the rest, ice, compression, elevation.
Yeah.
He came out and said, you know what? Ice is probably not the best thing that we could be doing right now. So that's then what started the conversation. And now everybody dives into it. Now, there's so many different tools that can help for so many different people, right? So there's not always a black and white line of when I should use ice or heat or when someone else should. Pain is different for everybody, right? So there's so many things that go into your pain. Maybe there's so many different tools that can help you with your pain. So that's a big deal.
Yeah. So ice can obviously, you say it constricts everything and it keeps everything in there, but it also prevents, other important circulation coming in. So for a long-term treatment, probably might not be the best. That's what I heard. So, but for an initial injury, and it depends on where it is, like you don't want some things to swell, right? It could cause other problems on the body. But in general, if you bump your arm or your leg and you've got a bruise, like the shin, right? And you've got a bruise, you're going to get that goose egg on there. There are other things, is what I hear you're saying. There are other things you could do that are as effective. You've said we got to change our mindset. We immediately go to ice, mostly because it's soothing for most people, right? The pain.
Right.
And it'll get that goose egg to be smaller, but that might not be facilitating tissue healing, right?
Exactly. So the constricting of everything, and even like with compression, sometimes it's just shutting down the highway of what needs to travel. So guess what options are?
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Right. We learned about that in our past episode of how you can lift that pressure off, right?
Exactly. So it's decompressive.
Yes.
And any kinesiology tape does the same thing because the elastic nature of the tape helps put a lift on the skin and all the vessels underneath it. So it's decompressive and it helps that fluid flow happen naturally. So the goose egg then helps relieve better. So, I mean, and you say that swelling in certain areas might be detrimental. I remember my youngest got hit in the eye brow with his sibling with a snow shovel. It happens. And it started swelling up pretty quick. It was like a grape, under the skin. And I was like, woo, let's not have it break skin. I essentially steri-stripped it. And that was one of my first, of course, family's great guinea pigs. But that was when I was first, really trying out this theory. And I steri-stripped it to kind of stabilize the skin from doing anything different. And then we go, okay, don't ice it. Maybe movement. How can we better movement? So I went through this whole angry face, make a surprise face.
Trying to get him to move.
Yep. I was like, just keep it moving.
Yeah.
And it goes from there.
So that's interesting. I think you're right. I think most people would would go to that one thing, right? That the old tried and true. Do you see a lot of education? You mentioned two professionals in your network. Is there a movement, maybe more in the emergent medicine type space, of like not using ice as much as the sort of that go-to?
That's a tough hill to climb. I know especially with my colleagues, there's just some regimented things in the medical and emergent fields that are, this is what we do. Now, granted, like something super traumatic, a big break or something like that you don't want like tissue damage and bleeding happen. Ice kind of like your meat in your freezer, it preserves your tissue where it's at. So I can see how, an EMT is going to totally think of this differently. But when we come down to the achy knee after a run, does it really need ice? And, I personally would then say no. I would say, how's the movement? How's the mobility? Let's tape it. Let's, get the fluid flow. Where's it coming from? A little more investigative approach to it.
So my last grumpy knee, it was several weeks back, and I did not put ice on my knee. I decided to do the stretching, right? The deep stretching. Afterwards, I was calmed, my knee had calmed down a little bit, and it wasn't painful to do the stretching. So I went ahead and I did the stretching, and I found that, and I've continued even to today with just stretching as a regimen, almost like it's an exercise. Like I want to run every day and do the push-ups and the sit-ups, and I want to stretch as well. That's important, and that's something you taught me. Mobility is important, and it hasn't bothered me. It kind of bothered me a little bit, but like it was very subtle, a marked improvement. I also discovered I overpronate, right? The rotation of my ankles, my feet to my ankles.
Yeah, the why behind it happening.
I had worn out the insoles on my running shoes. The running shoes themselves are fine. It was just the compression on the insoles that they don't hold up real well, the foam that they use. And so I bought new insoles for overpronation, for knee pain, and I tried those in there, and it hasn't come back. And so I'm going to pay attention to the compression. I'm going to measure the insoles, actually. This is how nerdy I am. Over time, and I'm going to mark like average number of miles I can run on those insoles before I just order another pair, and just preemptively just keep my insoles up. But for me, that's what I tracked it back down to. It wasn't even my knee. It was a combination of, it was the insole for sure, but then I have a wicked heel strike, right? So I changed my pose really to lean into the run a little bit more, and for the ball on the balls of my feet instead of the heel. So I had to, and Sean, and my friend Sean Rafferty, we were talking about this, and so he was like, well, this is how I run. I had to change, so I had to change the way I ran. And so people, I think this brings up a great point. It's, running, something as simple as running, you have to do it the right way, right? Your body tells you if you're doing it wrong, and if you don't listen to your body. And so thank you for forcing me to listen to my grumpy knee.
It's a thing, but so one of the sayings that we learned through massage school, because we go through and we learn a little bit about Rolfing. Rolfing is a real deep tissue 10 session technique, but Ida Rolf is the woman who started that whole protocol. But her famous quote is, where you think it is, it isn't. And, just really thinking of, and in most cases, where you think the source of your pain is, it is not. And even like in low backs, right? So if the low back stuff, I always direct people, like sometimes they're overusing their feet. Sometimes they're, not getting good three-dimensional motion of their hips. Maybe it's postural on top. There's so many different things that are top down, bottom up, who knows? But yeah, usually with aches and pains and grumpies, that actual spot is not the source of the problem
Yeah.
at
And you
all.
said it earlier when, before we started talking about this topic, but you said that it's not so much, I mean, barring an automobile accident, some catastrophic, event, but these grumpy muscles and joints is usually over time. It's cumulative, right? It's something that you've been doing for a while.
Yes. And here's where I'll put in my own example of my hip again, because it was like 2017. So easily 4 years ago, where I first got some grumpy hip. It was kind of sciatic-ish, feeling. I'm like, what is going on? And so me with all my tools, I'm like, let's try this and that. And I really made it super functional. I think I probably could have swept some stuff under the rug, right? I think the body's really good at doing that. You think that you've fixed it, but actually you've compensated around it and you don't really know that. And that's what I've just come to Jesus with it's so hard to see on yourself. I'm so much better at seeing it on someone else. So, but over time, it finally kind of had its way with me and said, well, it was like driving a car out of alignment for 4 years. It really didn't do me well. So it's that conversation of early reporting and really getting your ego out of it. And I think in blue collar industries for sure, it's that conversation of you're not being a hypochondriac. This doesn't make you a weak person. This makes you aware, and what can you do about it? And please try all sorts of things. I've tried the kitchen sink in the last year to really be conservative about it. And how can we have that conversation more?
Wow, that's a great message. That whole, I don't know, you can call it psychological safety, you can call it ego, they all apply. But whatever the reasons for apprehension, right? Or maybe explaining away. And I tell people this old story. This is back when I first started early in my career, when I left the fire department, got into working with a construction company. And there was a foreman who said, if your back isn't hurt, you didn't work hard enough today. That was his benchmark for how hard you worked, was how sore you were.
Ooh.
And yeah, no pain, no gain, right? So,
Shoot.
I mean, and there's and that's where we got to be careful, right? I mean, when I exercise, I'm sore. There's good sore and there's bad sore. So
yeah, there's good pain, bad pain. I don't always like to throw it into pain, but it's a conversation to have. Like, is there such thing? Yeah.
That's a sensation that you're experiencing. Exactly. And there's good sensations, there's bad sensation. Isn't that a song? No, that's Good Vibrations. That's what was that Marky Mark? Was that?
No, yes.
Marky Mark or something like that.
Oh my gosh. Let's date ourselves a little bit more.
I'm way past that. Everybody knows I'm an old fart. So, but you're right. It's being able to say that in that self-talk, that negative self-talk of, oh, people are going to think you're just a big baby, or nobody's going to listen to you, or it's not that big of a deal. Your body's trying to tell you something.
Exactly.
And you listen to the quiet voice before it starts screaming, right?
Exactly. And it's one that, I've definitely learned over the past year, the effects of being in pain. And even if it's, it's kind of like turning up the static radio just enough, it's annoying. It affects you. I mean, people probably know I'm annoyingly happy. I'm a super, optimist on lots of things. And, sometimes like my husband would just be like, what's up? And then I kind of had to look in, and pain, it has a lot of reaching effects that you may not always realize. And so it's not good just to suck it up. That you really, when you notice that it's affecting you, your sleep, all those certain things, that for sure, right? And then we get into this. I was listening to your previous one about safety and wellness, and how that's really engaging and connecting. And for sure, that's one that is that'll connect safety and wellness for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. When you mentioned earlier that you may have compensated around some things, I know I've done that, and it's led to other problems. My wife went through this. You experience pain in one part of your body, so you limit the use of that, or you adjust even your gait, even how you walk. A limp is an example where you favor one side. Next thing you know, that other side, you develop pain or soreness on that side that's now carrying the load. And you just compound now you got two parts of your body that are achy or grumpy, and it's just going to keep snowballing from there. So that's interesting. Never thought about like, when you see somebody compensating, and that might be a good, it gets kind of tricky, but, I'm thinking from a safety professional standpoint, from an intervention standpoint. I mean, if I see somebody who normally doesn't limp and they're walking through the shop or they're doing something and they're limping, probably going to ask, hey, what's going on with the limp? You trying a new thing or what? Is this the new style, or is this,
right.
Little, what was the old phrase? Dip in your hip or something? I don't know.
I don't know. I call it the pimp walk.
Oh my God.
It's just, it's got that move. I don't know. It's one of those. I do have a story on that. When I was back doing massage and strength coaching, I had a client who came in for a frozen shoulder. And so it was just not moving very well. And if we were doing lots of massage stuff, a little bit of strength things, and I'm just like, and fun little, you get to learn more about new things. I'm like, let's watch you walk. And I was watching him walk, and he had this little pimp walk going on. And if you think about it, like one arm was swinging and one was not. His frozen shoulder was not swinging, and you're like, oh, well, that must be the shoulder. But I'm like, wait a second. He's like, oh yeah, I busted my ankle like 20 years ago. And that's where I have a funky walk. I've had that forever. That was first. And so then not swinging the arm for a long time, the muscles are like, oh, you want me to stay here? Let's stay here. So we actually worked on the ankle and the gait, and it helped the shoulder.
Called it out. Did it? Yeah.
It was so crazy, right? So
isn't that great how I know we're total geeks here, but like when you figure something out, isn't that like one of the best feelings in the world?
It is the best. It is the best.
Yeah.
I'm not, I tell my blue collar trades people how talented they are, and they're so amazing at fixing things. I can't do that, but I can help fix your body. And that's where I get my, joy.
It's the same thing. So they probably can relate to you on that when they troubleshoot something and figure something out, and
yes, not
just replacing a part, but figuring out what's causing it to fail early or before its usefulness or something like that, and then make that improvement. There's something about that. I don't know. It's just you get that fun, that fuzzy feeling.
For sure. And they love how they can teach that. And they teach that to, upcoming apprentices and all that sort of stuff. And that brings them joy. I'm like, yes, giving tips like that is a great thing.
There you go.
That's where I see we're evolving, away from rub some dirt on it, sweep it under the rug.
So we talked about cold. What do you have any thoughts on heat? So let's flip that to the extreme opposite. I mean, should I put heat on my knee, my grumpy knee, or, is there an appropriate application? Again, not, from a medical, post-op type or injury, but just everyday aches and pains from work or exercise. Is there an appropriate time for heat?
I love heat. I think there's always an appropriate time for heat.
Well, you said you're always cold, right? So.
Right. But think about it, out of a hot shower, people usually feel better and more flexible. It kind of goes to my silly putty analogy that, silly putty, you take it out of the little egg and you go hard and fast, it'll break. But if you warm it up and stretch it slow, you get lots of motion out of it. So kind of the same with your muscle tissues is the heat will dilate everything and help that circulation. With ice, sometimes you can end up with skin burns, and there's a little more risk to icing. Heat, you could also go too hot, right? And the skin problem, but it's very rare that, with a nice low heating pad that you can do any damage. So I always tell people, try what works for you best. And what do you like? Again, there's so many different tools out there that might work best for you and your body likes better.
For those on audio only,
oh, sorry.
She held up the rock tape, and that there are other tools out there. I love her. I love the subtleness of that.
Right. And look,
that's
okay.
awesome.
And so, sorry for those who are on audio, but I'm going to describe also a couple of things because I had them ready. I have a massage gun, one of those impact massage guns that there's lots of different brands. There's super expensive ones. This one is super reasonable from Trigger Point, but the percussion and the vibration, there's vibration rollers out there now. Again, things that help your circulation and help your body do what it's naturally going to do are really helpful to try. And so, granted, I'm not going to come out post-surgery and stick the impact gun right on my incision, right? We're not,
Ow.
Common sense always goes a long way. But I bet you my other leg is going to be working hard.
Yeah, there you go. I was going to say, worst case, you'll try it once, but not after that. So yeah, you're going to have to keep us fill us in, keep us updated on like progress, how it goes, what you learn, share, like you said at the beginning, be able to share with others what you're going through. When's the big date? Do you have a date or?
I have a date, November 11th.
Oh, wow. So, that's like coming up.
I know, it's like in a month.
So you're going to Kansas and then you're going
and then I have some time, and then I have all my pre-op appointments and stuff like that. And then I'm going in, but no, I mean, so like on my Instagram and Instagram stories, I have it going on my journey on there. So at the Movement Ninja Lori on Instagram, and also on my YouTube channel, I'm going to do weekly video blogs on it, and just, help people see it all in action.
See it all in action. Are you going to tell me, did you ask for a bionic hip?
Yeah, I said, can I get the one that makes me run? But I don't like to run anyway. So
pole vault without the pole. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's all the certain decisions of, I actually went and got 2 opinions and interviewed the doctors. And okay, here's another topic for another podcast is, who's your medical advocate? Do you know that you have so many choices? You can choose your doctor and who you like and groove with most. So I ultimately picked the one that, when I said that I'm going to be your difficult patient, like I'm going to challenge you on a lot of things and be like, why can't I do that? What's the thing? Why am I doing? And he's like, I'm going to tell you, and we'll have a conversation, and you can do what you're going to do. Right. So, that's how I ultimately chose who I was going to go with. And then anterior on the front incision versus posterior on the back, it's changed a lot. There's a lot of stuff out there. So ultimately, that's what I'm going with, is the anterior approach. Better recovery, they say. So.
Yeah. My wife taught me this as well when she was going through, when she was first diagnosed with breast cancer, that you have to advocate for your own health. You have to be your best advocate. And to your point, if you aren't sure about something, you're the one that's supposed to stop and ask. And if you can't, or you don't feel you can't, you have to have somebody with you, a family member, a friend, or whatever that you trust, that can go with you to appointments, or can ask questions you might not see. But I think you're spot on that you've got to be your best advocate for your own health. And there are models of people may not know this, especially the knee. There are different types of joint replacements based on age, expected activity, life. Yes. I mean, it's morbid to think about it, but lifespan, because it's a joint. So did you talk about all those?
And just the technology of how it is right now, that they last. I mean, my dad had his hips done when he was 58, and he is now 78 ish. So and he's doing great with him. So the longevity, and that was, 20 years ago. So
20 years ago. Yeah.
it's really come a long way.
That's great. All right, Lori, always a pleasure to talk with you. I'll grab your links to your Instagram account as well, and drop them in the show notes so everybody can follow your story and learn what we can through you. I think you're taking there's got to be something cathartic about it, like that you're sharing this with others, that you're looking at it from a learning experience, something like this that you're going through. Because a lot of people could be like, think about it. I mean, a hip replacement, it's a big, I don't know, it seems scary to a lot of people, right?
It's a major surgery, most definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's great that you're sharing this and you're talking openly about it, because it kind of takes some of the scariness out of it, that you're like, oh, well, yeah, they're going through that. Other people have gone through. My mother-in-law had one.
Yes.
Had a hip replacement.
Well, and it does relate to any sort of procedure that you might have done, or even if you don't have to have a procedure. Like, I just hope to bring the perspective in, like, okay, where you think it isn't. What was really causing it? What can you do early? And then it's not the end of the world if you do have to have something done, but did you try everything first? I did have some people reach out. They're like, wow, I had people tell me that I needed to schedule one right away. And then I got better with these other things. And I'm like, awesome. That's great. I tried those. So, but just to, open the conversation and dialogue of, from the most minimal of like wound care, the creepiness of me. I love to remove sutures.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you and I are probably similar in this one. And it's one of those weird.
Yes. If you have that background.
Not like we go around and ask you, hey, you got any sutures?
Yeah.
But it is something we discovered, right? That we like.
Yes. I'm like, wow, I could do that. It's
Yep.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I may not do that live, but
I was going to say, are you going to do yours on your Instagram story? Taking your own sutures out. The doctor might have some words with you that one, right? Taking them out too early or something.
Well, and thus, going by thing, but why go in for an appointment when you can just take them out yourself? Sorry, let's not. Yeah. Anywho, that's a rabbit hole.
Hey, I joked when both children were born. They were like, "Hey, you wanna cut the cord?" And I'm like, "Really? Isn't there somebody more qualified for this? And do I get a discount if I do?" I was,
Yes.
I'm thinking, no, nothing. It was just they let me do it, and that was it.
Right. To say.
So interesting stuff, great stuff. I look forward to seeing some of your updates and learning more. And you're very active in the community, our community anyway, out there on LinkedIn and Instagram. So it's not like folks are going to wonder, what's Lori doing? So you're really good at posting updates.
Well, thank you. And I do love in your community how it's nice to be tagged when, there's different conversations going on. And the fact that, you think of me when you're doing your backyard work and, other people, I get these little messages. They're like, oh, hey, I thought of you while I was doing this. That's the best. I'm honored to be a part of people's brains.
You should be, because you're impacting people's lives. I think, I was talking to somebody yesterday on another episode, and we were talking that we don't get it much, like workplace safety folks don't get it much, but man, there is nothing like somebody reaching out to you from the past, like an employee that you used to work with, or somebody that says, hey, remember that training you did, or hey, you came in and did a talk on this, and that happened, it's years later, and it's like, and I remember that, and I stopped something from happening, or I don't know, something like that.
Definitely.
It's sometimes we don't hear enough feedback on the impact we may have on others. So when we do get the feedback, not to sound congratulatory or anything, but everybody likes to feel like they make a difference.
For sure.
I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
And so you're right, that feedback. So anybody listening, if you have feedback for Lori, if you've enjoyed any of her content, as the rest of us have, be sure to let her know. And certainly when she's on the mend, make sure you send all that positive energy her way. So,
and ask questions. I do love questions. I love requests, all the time. So, yeah.
Well, we'll keep it going. Yeah, sometimes I invoke your name, not in vain, but I'll say I'll go, dang it, I gotta call Lori. Or I gotta,
right?
Something like that, because something's going on and I'm like, not too sure. Or I'll say it like you're watching. I'll say, Lori would probably not like this if I were like in the backyard when I was moving all that aggregate and doing the patio and the stonework. I was, who do I know that would not like watching me do this right now? And so sometimes your name comes up there, which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing. But, which is why I have my my own membership that has all of those troubleshooting videos all categorized, so they don't have to.
So what's that website? Because we're going to link to that, but tell everybody.
It's through the movementninja.com. And so that one's launching. And I mean, if you don't want to be a part of that membership, there's you can go to my YouTube channel, and that has all the videos there. But in my membership, I categorized it for everybody. So if you have a foot, a knee, you can just zip right in there and be like, oh, knee stuff. Look through all the knees and serve your wellness.
I searched your YouTube channel. My wife has a hip flexor issue, and so some stretches. Was there one against the wall where you put your foot up on the wall? That one. I found that one, and I said, because she's like extreme, like deep stretching, like what's the most extreme type of stretch I could do for this? And I found that one. I remember didn't you say like this was a little more?
It is an intense one. Advanced? Yeah. Some people call it the couch stretch. You can find it on a lot of things, but yeah, up against a wall or a couch, that gets it.
That makes sense. The couch would work, but she liked that one. And you're right. It's handy to search like all your different videos. So the YouTube channel is a great resource, folks, if you're looking for good tips on stuff like that. And certainly check out The Movement Ninja, themovementninja.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. The word "the" is in there.
Yes, it is.
All right. Just like thesafetypropodcast.com.
Look at that.
So themovementninja.com, and consider becoming a member over there and, being a part of that tribe. So how soon, wait a minute, you just launched that recently, right?
Yeah, it's I launched it because I had a lot of demand for it, and there's still a little bit of, what would you call it? Scaffolding still there, right? But I was just like, enough people are asking, I need to get it out there. And so
there you go.
Polishing is still in place. But,
nice.
And, I'd be happy to collaborate with your member group and, give some discounts or certain things. So let's work on that.
Let's work on something for the premium members along those lines. That would be awesome if we could collaborate a little bit.
Most definitely.
A little back and forth type of thing. Well, everybody, Lori Frederic, this is our third?
I think so.
Third, it's a hat trick.
Ooh, I like that.
It's the third one. So, and I hope to have you back on when you're, back up on your feet. I mean, you'll be on your feet. My mother-in-law, she was on her feet the next day. They got her up walking. They were like, yeah, you're not going to lay here.
Nope. Movement is good. About after my first cartwheel, I will come back on.
First cartwheel. All right. Well, we won't do it live on the podcast, but I'll take your word that you had your first cartwheel. So.
Okay. We'll do that.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us and talking about all things hot, cold, and what's going on in your life right now. We always appreciate it.
Thanks, Blaine. I appreciate being on here. It's a good resource to have.
All right, there you have it, folks. Lori, just fantastic, as always. I never want to stop a conversation with her, so it's always difficult to wrap up an episode with Lori. Look, we're going to keep tabs on Lori. She's out there on social media. Go to her various social media channels to follow her. Also, be sure to check out themovementninja.com and go ahead and subscribe. Sign up for the content that she has over there. I know it's helped me. It's going to help you as well. And be on the lookout for Lori also over at the Safety Pro podcast community. That's right. She's a member over there as well. And we like to collaborate on some things from time to time. And if you're not a member of the Safety Pro podcast community, think about joining. You're going to get a lot of good content over there. You're going to be able to join in on all those conversations and discussions that we're having. And I will talk to you on the next Safety Pro podcast.